Welcome back to Logistics and Leadership. Today, Brian and I are going to discuss why people in logistics fail. Brian, safe to say you've found success in logistics. You've also seen plenty of other successes and probably more so, plenty of failures.
Yeah, it's, we were just talking about this off camera, but our industry has a pretty high turnover rate. I think from a sales perspective, it's somewhere in the 80 to 90% range on the sales side. And I think that's a lot of it has to do with, the first 2 years. So the 0 to 2 year range, when people first get into it, it's challenging. It is a hard profession. It's hard work. I think a lot of folks, they're not willing to do the work. They're not willing to put in the effort to do those sort of things. So like you start with a bigger brokerage or you start with a larger brokerage, kind of like we did. Yep. And I think, one thing that we did, I had a front row seat to it because, we were in the same office in Lexington. But, seeing you, come in and work your butt off every single day, that's what it takes. And for me, I know that I wasn't the best salesperson. I wasn't the best communicator probably, but I was willing to put in that work, on the front end to get some of that stuff or lay the foundation for other customers. I think it's, the real reason why people fail, I think it's they're just not willing to do the work. Hard conversations, tough industry, blue collar, those sorts of things.
Well, I think that's it. What it boils down to is the work ethic. I think it has to start there. There are people that have found success that I've worked with, and I've seen them succeed. That they weren't the hardest workers, but they had a lot of other stronger attributes that replaced the work ethic. It kind of offset it, and I was similar to you, where I wasn't the best communicator. I wasn't the most savvy sales rep. I was just a grunt. Like I just wanted to put in the work. I knew I had some buddies that were at, and I don't think this is a secret by now, but you and I both started in logistics at TQL. Right. I had some buddies there that were working at the headquarters. They told me exactly how it is and what to expect. So I knew going into it what to expect. So the hours and the failures and the no's, the hang-ups, getting cussed out, like none of that stuff fazed me because I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, you knew more of the expectations on the front end.
Correct.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, our industry, I love it, and I think it's such a blue collar industry where it doesn't stop moving. Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, nights, evenings, weekends. That's one thing that I think a lot of people get burnt out with is like they don't want to handle nights and evenings or weekends or whatever it is. It is hard. Every single day coming in and doing those things, like that's the hard part. And I think people, this industry is not a 40-hour-a-week industry, especially at the start, right? Maybe later on in your career tenure, that might be the case. But early on, I think that's why a lot of folks that get into logistics, they don't, see it through, because I also think this day and age, people are hesitant to have hard conversations or deliver bad information to clients, right? Where, we have and I'm not going to stereotype our entire society, but I feel like with the invention of the iPhone and with social media, you can be a keyboard warrior where you can go in, you can type a message and there's nothing back. Right, you can go in and type a message, and there's not a response.
Oh, that felt good.
Yeah, and you can.
I told them.
You can have you have the ability, or you have the freedom to put your phone down. Right, you send a nasty text message to somebody, and then you just put your phone down, and you don't even have to hear what they have to say, as opposed to having a verbal phone call over the phone. Hey, this driver's late. I'm very sorry. Here's what's going on. The customer's obviously going to be pissed and come back at you. And I think that's another reason why I think people fail in logistics, is because they're not willing to have those hard conversations, which I think we have them every other day, right? If not every day, whether that's on the customer side, carrier side, hell, with an employee sometimes, right? Like those are the things that I think set successful people apart in logistics. So
I completely agree, but I would also take a different spin on it. And I would say it comes down to fear.
Sure.
where they fear that the conflict or the tough conversation, or they feel failing, themselves, a parent, a loved one, a friend, a client, a carrier, whatever it may be. They fear that failure, and it's easier for them to just be like, oh, well, I'm taking this job. And I've never heard someone say, like, I'm taking this job and it pays double.
I love that part about the fear side of it. And I think in our job, it's challenging because we don't have a lot of control over what happens. And we try to be the intermediary as much as possible and be the middle person where I'm, structuring the shipper and the receiver and the driver and the customer and everybody else in between, right? So I think those are the challenges sometimes where we, if you're in that role, you have to make sure all parties are happy. I think, so one thing that somebody told me this a while ago, and I love the analogy because I'm a baseball guy, but being a good freight broker is kind of like being a good umpire. If you're not really talked about and you're not really, there's not a whole lot said about you, it means you're doing a good job, right? Where, I think that, we think about that from like an umpire perspective or a referee perspective. If you don't really talk about the refs, they're probably doing a pretty good job, right? So I think, you do have to relinquish that control. And it is a hard job. It is something that a lot of people fail at. Hell, 80, 90% from the last time that we, looked at some data. It's definitely, something that is not for the mentally weak.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the fear and the inability to, relinquish control is definitely a huge contributor to why people either phase out, step back, step away, whatever it is, quit. I think that's probably the number one. And then when you break it down from there, there's a lot of other factors that come into play there. But and I even think I remember it may have been Rich, our producer, that we were talking about this either a month ago, a couple months ago about control, and it's when you're so focused on the uncontrollables, you lose control of the controllables. And that's something we do discuss a lot with our team, is they get so caught up on the small things that are completely out of their control. Instead of, you're a huge advocate of the two controllables, effort and attitude. You talk about it all the time. Control those, and the rest will run its course. But when your driver falls out or a prospect hangs up on you and you want to spend an hour or two pouting and throwing in the towel, it's like that's completely out of your control. Like either you bomb the opening or the person's having a bad day.
Right. I mean, we just had one in the operations side. Hell, right before we got on this, I was on a call with one of our employees, and the shipper's forklift went down, right? So what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? It's like those are the challenges that we have to, resolve, especially in our business. How do you handle that? Do you let that, bog you down? It's 9:30 in the morning. Are we going to, get pissed off the entire day? Or are we going to turn that around and try to figure something out and make something good out of it?
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said around the interview process and bringing in the right people.
Sure.
I think that's common knowledge.
Yeah.
But one thing that you and I think we do pretty well is when we're interviewing candidates, we look for in their past experiences where they've ran into adversity.
Sure.
They have some resilience. They've shown signs of being mentally tough, because if you have that, a lot of what we face in day-to-day in logistics, it's just adversity.
Right.
It's issues. It's solving problems. And people that haven't faced adversity and they're not very resilient, they come in here and it's like, we can tell them till we're blue in the face, hey, this job is tough. You make a lot of phone calls. You're going to fail. People are going to hang up on you. It's like, oh, I got that. I just want to make a lot of money. But they don't know how to handle adversity. So then when they start actually facing those things, they crumble. Yeah,
I think one of the things that we just interviewed a guy recently, and he's been great so far. He's only been with us for about 6 months, so he goes through that training phase, and then he just started in sales, and he's doing pretty well so far. He's not like a successful broker status yet, but I know I love him, you love him. He's a guy, and even going through his interview process, and kind of a green flag for us. And he just even mentioned the adversity was he played college baseball, and he told us in the interview process that he was benched his senior year. He did great. He was all conference, all I forget, all league or whatever the first couple years.
It was a killer.
Yeah, and then his senior year, new coach came in and he got benched. And it was like, oh my God, like that to me is the resilience. Like, okay, how'd you overcome that? How is that something that, you spent 3 years there, you did really well, new coach comes in, and now you're dealing with this adversity. I love that side of it. I know you loved it too.
Oh yeah.
During the interview process, but that's something that, to look out for, especially for folks that are listening. Okay, let's hone in on the interview process, challenge the people to really focus on the adversity, or when did you overcome anything that was challenging in your life. But I
think we looked right at each other after that interview. And
okay.
I don't even know if we said anything. We just nodded like that.
Did we offer him on the spot? I think we probably did. But do you think, is there anything else that we're not thinking about, why people fail, or why people fail in our industry, our space in the first several years?
It starts with work ethic and I guess faith in themselves. But when you break that down a little bit more on why people fail or why people succeed, I think there's a handful of things. The big ones for me are the consistency, the discipline, and the confidence. I think if the confidence is rarely there unless they have previous experience or they've succeeded in other sales roles. So we can help them build that confidence. But, the discipline, the organization, the consistency, that's on them. I say this to every single person we bring in, but the moment I start feeling like I care more about their success than they care about it themselves, I'm out. I'm done. Because if they don't have the discipline to do the small fundamentals that are required to succeed, and they can't be consistent with it, and they can't stay organized with their sales pipeline or operations, they're going to fizzle out. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's discipline and consistency. Those are the two things that are required to continue building a book of business and find success in logistics, in my opinion. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, man. And I think, with the consistency part, that builds momentum. So if you're consistent, it's just like exercise or sticking to a habit, or, hell, we're right around the New Year's resolution phase where, folks are setting those New Year's resolutions. I forget the stat. I know it's crazy, but so many people fall off on January 13th or whatever the day. I don't know the day. But staying consistent, that creates more momentum for you and the opportunity to set up a new client, making sure that you're servicing that client on a daily basis. So I think, with consistency builds momentum. And, I think a lot of people, they don't stay consistent, right? Yep. They don't have that discipline that you're talking about, to get to the next level. Now, if you're a listener today, please ask questions. Please, drop a note, in the comments below on YouTube. Would love to hear some questions that you guys have on, hiring practices, what to look for, how to, manage and run a sales team, because we do have that experience and we'd love to help out in any way. I think it does start in the interview process, like we discussed. You have people that will say, I'm a 10 out of 10, in competitiveness. Sure. Or, I played sports and I refuse to lose in tic-tac-toe. You have the cliche answers, but how do you figure out if they're actually competitive? Yeah.